Gen Xers, you ever wish Mary Poppins would come down and help your kids? Do you ever have that thought? I'm a teacher, and as much as I try to be Mary Poppins, I can tell you that we really could use some Mary Poppins vibe going on, because I just feel a little bored these days. I need to feel inspired. I need to feel like I'm growing like a seed and starting to engage in some new information, new ways of doing things. My name is Suzanne M. Swain, EDS, MSSW, and I exist in a funny little space somewhere between a therapist and a teacher, and it's a great space to be. So I teach emotions. I've been a professor. I've been an 8th grade teacher for a really long time and taught writing. I also taught 5th grade science, and I have been studying the art of education and pedagogy for years, ever since I was born. A long time. But I finally finished my project, and I would really love to share with you some things that I've learned along the way on my yellow brick road of imagination into the world of education. But I've always felt that fixing education isn't about policy and labeling kids in certain departments and doing this and that. I'm not about labels. I realize that a lot of the problem that we have in education is actually the words we're using. That's the enemy. It's not the people. It's all about the people. I loved teaching and loved getting to know all of the families and diverse cultures and food and music and everything. I always just felt so connected. You ever feel that connection with people? You have a job or something where you just like, these are my folks. And you just felt like you could thrive because ideas started happening. You networked and you felt plugged into the world. And sometimes I have to go back and watch Mary Poppins because it reminds me of what the essential nature of teaching is that inspiring joy is the sunshine for learning, right? There's a lady named Dr. Rita, God rest her soul, and she was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And she did a TED Talk. And in the TED Talk, she said, kids don't learn from people they don't like. Some of the wisest words I've ever heard. But you know what's funny? Most of my teaching career, people thought I was insane for that. Yeah. I had roadblocks all over the place, y'all. But then I realized, I was like, you know what? We need to go into creativity. We need to go into ideas. And what if my middle school classroom could be like a think tank? You know, and we have all these diverse people and there's all this potential here. And who knows what these kids are going to grow up to be? All these different little brains, like all these little consoles at Inside Out with all these little characters sitting at the table, watching me, trying to get whatever they could in academic vitamins from me each and every day in 45 minutes or less. They had to be there. They had no choice, so they didn't really worry about that. It wasn't about money. I mean, it wasn't for any kind of pay or anything. The exchange was just the interaction of information. And it's honest, and it's pure, and it's good. Because as a teacher, obviously everyone knows you don't be a teacher for the money. That's not it. Because money, power, and ego are not the things you want to focus on if you want to be a teacher. That's not it. You're a Honda Civic kind of person. But like Mary Poppins, teachers, we were a little bit hoardy. We have a lot of hoarder kind of tendencies where that little bit of glue left or oh, wait, I have a couple of candies left in this one bag. And our backpacks are probably just a giant Walgreens mishmash pile or something like that. But we try, darn it. We try for our $40,000 a year and we fight the good fight every day. And I just felt like I wanted to have some appreciation for the teacherhood of Mary Poppins and to say to my fellow teachers out there that I feel like we need to be inspired. And I feel like it's time for teachers now. Do you notice this? It's like the teacher movement is coming. And I'm so excited about this because it's about learning. Again, thank you. I'm such a neurodivergent of the 80s that I'm like, everything is some metaverse. And I'm like, video games or I'm listening to music or whatever. And in the metaverse, there's a place for a Mary Poppins. Because what is she really? She's a nanny, but we don't really do that now. So if you were to take Mary Poppins and remix her, make a mixtape of Mary Poppins in a way, both movies, sure, why not? All the books, and just remix it with Walt Disney's brain, because wouldn't you just love to swim around in there for a while and see what happens in a modern world with that? Put her out there, or him, or they, or whoever, but get that person there and let them inspire people. Let them be the best professional development we've ever had to just reignite the flame of interest in our jobs. Because, quite frankly, being a teacher doesn't seem like a pretty awesome thing to do on paper. Now, you get all the vibes of the kids, you get the feels. The kids are amazing. You love them like they're your own. As also a therapist, I spoke with a little girl yesterday that had some really tough stuff going on. She lost her parents and she felt really alone. She was just a little thing, about 8 years old. I lost my mom when I was 13 and went to school the very next day. And my teachers were the ones that kind of took care of me. They took me in like a village. And I felt plugged in and connected right at that moment, whereas I don't know how I could have survived at that point. My dad also had cancer, so things were pretty sad at home. So school was my place of light. It was warm and glowy and snuggly and like a blanket of information that I could take with me. And the librarians were just Google before Google was a Google thing, but they had amazing card catalogs you could flip through and all kinds of tactile things. And it was a place of wonder. Like, it was a place of opportunity and where I could have the distraction I needed from difficult things in my life. And so this little girl yesterday, she's sitting there and it's like, how do you explain such a complicated mess and how to get out of it to an 8-year-old? And you just see the look in her eyes and you're just melting. Your heart just melts. This kid is worse than any Sarah McLachlan puppy commercial type of thing you'd ever see. And I wanted to make her happy. And I was like, I'm going to have to lie. That's the only thing I can do. I need to give her a shot of something that's just joy. Like the polar opposite of whatever emotion she is feeling right now. And it's some kind of horrible mixed sadness emotion. But one thing I know about sadness from inside out is I know that she represents empathy. I had a great opportunity to speak with Meg LaFaux, who wrote Inside Out in a Zoom recently. And we talked about some ideas I had about the movie, and she was so helpful. And I think about her being the game maker of Inside Out, like on the outskirts there. And how does she plan sadness? But she said that sadness means empathy. And you can see that from the way that she sat with Bing Bong and consoled him. And she's the teacher of the whole group there. She's the one who's the teacher. And it's funny because as a little glasses wearing, sweater wearing, melancholy sideliner who sat on the carpet rolls at the dance on the sides and play with stuff, now I'd have a phone, as to be sadness is actually a good thing. Because what I always saw in sadness in the movie is that she was like a Mary Poppins. Disney has a great way of bringing in these characters, but this little piece of empathy and kindness and sweetness and everything that goes along with what it means to be a real person. Because I always wondered about Mary Poppins' backstory. What does she eat? What was her favorite food? What does she do to hang out? What would she watch on Netflix? Yeah, it's like I want a remix, modern version. So this little girl, I told her, I said, kiddo, I got something to tell you. You have won the lottery. So I looked around the room and I tried to find something I could give her, like a ticket or anything. And I found this little glittery piece of paper thing and I wrote on it, ticket. And I handed it to her and I said, I have been sent here to help you. Really? Yeah, I've been sent here to help you. And you know what? I am your fairy god teacher. It's nice to meet you. My name is Suzanne. And here's the deal. You helped me escape after teaching 8th graders for so long and using so many Glade plugins to deal with the smell in the classroom. I now get to be a fairy. She's like, what? I said, yeah, it's funny. I was going to go to get my doctorate, but no, I got another weird letter in the mail. And this letter came in purple packaging and it had all kinds of squiggly noodly things all over it. And it asked me to go to fairy school because I had been a master teacher and an administrator and a librarian and all these different things in the school. And I tried every single job I possibly could so I could know everything I could about the strategy of school. And instead of going back to UT to get my doctorate where I had gotten my clinical social work degree in May, I said, kiddo, I opened that package because you got to open something like that. And I was invited to be a fairy god teacher. Wow. Lucky me. And she said, okay, so how do you get to be one? I said, we're rare. There's only 2 in Putnam County where I live, saying I live in Tennessee out in a rural area. I was like, yeah, there's only 2 of us here around here. And in Cookville, we got 2. And she's wide-eyed. She goes, can I meet the other one? I'm like, maybe. We'll do a lunch or something. I said, I have a lunch with the tooth fairy next week. Her name is Debbie. and she did pro bono dentistry work out in Africa for kids. And so then she got a letter to become a tooth fairy. She's okay. You just got to sell it. I was like, sure, we can have lunch. And I said, I became a fairy god teacher by having a master's degree in education, then getting an educational specialist degree, which is even rare because it doesn't even exist in a lot of states. It's like between a doctorate and a master's. And then you have to go back to school again, outside of education, outside of pedagogy and all these things. And then you got to learn to be a therapist. So you got to learn all there is to know about emotions and that whole swirly world. Thank goodness we have movies like Inside Out to help us out, because I need a visual here, please. Wow. She was mesmerized. She was absolutely intoxicated with the idea that I could, in fact, be a fairy. It was great. The joy was coming back. You could see it in her eyes. Her whole body language started to change. 80% of language is nonverbal. You could see her just opening up. And she grabbed something fuzzy and safe and took a candy and things like that. And she was just ready to listen. I said, yeah. I go to this special school. It's online through UT. And it's like a special program you have to have a real special password for. It was modern and would probably work. And so she bought it. And I said, yeah, to do all kinds of weird classes in imagination and creativity and art and painting. And it was a really cool artsy sort of world, and dance and theater and all these neat things, and taught us to use our imaginations for joy, and how the chemical adrenaline can be dangerous sometimes, because adrenaline is like Red Bull, and it's supposed to help you for fight or flight when really bad stuff happens. But sometimes it sticks around too long, and then you stay there in that mode. Like when something really bad happens and you can't get out of it, it's all that adrenaline is just running around. It's Red Bull. But then it's weird because like when you drink the Red Bull, the character anxiety shows up. And she's like, she's super helpful, super smart, super technology oriented. She's all kinds of capable, but crippled by her own emotions. Herself. Imagine the emotions inside of emotions. Inside of anxiety's head. Yeah, go there. I have questions. But if you get her to calm down and stop drinking the Red Bull and sit in a massage chair and draw a picture for a little while, imagination comes back out and Bing Bong starts to play. And everybody starts hanging out and having a good time in a dance party with disco balls and all kinds of fun and silly string. If you don't learn from people you don't like, then we need to make sure that liking your teacher is part of it. And as a Gen Xer, I have to say that it's most of our kids that are in middle school right now. And middle school is now in dumpster fire mode. It really is. These are warrior teachers. I'm telling you, they're like the Navy SEALs. Okay? These people, props to some 7th and 8th grade teachers. I see you out there. I see you, especially my English teachers. 8th grade English teachers, hello to you, cupcakes and Slurpees. Big grants, things like that. But it's bad. Now, do you know how middle school started? You got to go back to the beginning on this one. In order to have a Mary Poppins, you got to know where we had the need for her to begin with. Middle school, the schools originally were started by something called the Old Satan Deluder Law. It's in the Smithsonian. I've seen it. I actually fangirled over it when the last time I went to DC for a gun violence conference. The Old Satan Deluder Law says that if kids do not have a formal public education, that they could be abducted by Satan and possessed. True enough. Now, middle schools, on the other hand, came on along later on when they realized that puberty was a form of hysteria. Because women were being tranked, basically, with things during the day like Valium and whatnot, and men were at work and all these things in the 50s and 60s, and they thought if puberty was like a form of hysteria, much like PMS or that cycle would be, what if maybe we need to talk to some psychiatrists and see what to do with these kids because they're crazy. And they brought in psychiatrists and told them that they basically need to make a mental health facility for kids going through puberty because they could be possessed by Satan or, in fact, just be a little too wild for the regular populace and cause too much trouble, because schools are based on the Prussian, German, otherwise German, school model of raising kids in order to be factory workers. So they use bell systems, and if you only go to the bathroom at certain times, and we've adopted that into our school system as what we're doing. So all that bell stuff, that's from making us factory workers. We're not factory workers, most of us anymore, because a lot of factories have closed and things. It's time to modernize. We're still going on the basic thought of education from way back in the day in the founding of our country when things like this are why we started. Yeah, middle schools, junior highs, as they were called mostly, were started in that same model of being basically a psych ward, to put them away for a couple of years and see what happens. But where it failed out is that those teachers were not taught mental health and how to cope with a variety of learning disabilities, learning issues, and so on. Okay. We tried different options, and I was able to go to an arts magnet school for middle school. Palm Beach County School of the Arts class of 1996. I went all the way through to my senior year. And guess what, y'all? Mary Poppins lives. She's out there. She was at the School of the Arts. That's where Mary Poppins is. That's the teaching environment she needs to be in. If we want to think about how Mary Poppins is doing, because she's a teacher and they need help, like someone needs to reach out. Hello, are you okay? Do you need help? Do you want to talk? Let me take you for a piece of cake and pizza or whatever and say what you need to say, girl. Person, anyone, as an educator. And I don't want you to think of classroom teachers only as the only teachers in your life. Anyone that shares knowledge with you as a transaction, that's a teacher. That's a teacher. So these teachers need some help right now, and they need some inspiration and some professional development and something to get them wound back up. And it's going to be a lot more than some popsicles and a dance party. So what we can do is look at schools that worked. Look at situations that brought joy to our children and let them have a childhood back. Gen Xers, we have an epidemic of homeschooling going on. And I love the fact that people are making the choice to choose a different path for their child. And for whatever reason that may be, I think that's great. It's very admirable. My best friend Dana, she's homeschooling right now. And I learned so much from her and her children that, hi guys. And I can understand the reasons why people are wanting to homeschool. And K-12 teachers are frustrated. Money's being stripped from them left and right. All these things are happening. And now they want to blow up the Department of Education, all kinds of crazy stuff. So it doesn't seem like it's a time for teachers, but yet it does. Because you have Abbott Elementary. People are starting to understand the plight of teachers and how funny the world of teaching is. It is the weirdest, most noodly, crazy little place you ever saw. Imagine working at a middle school for the arts. So I got into that school when I was 13, and I went there for 7th through 12th grade. I was in the visual arts department, Go Visual. We had a red little application form, and I thought that was ironic in time of Alanis Morissette that the red paper meant something positive and that it was a good blessing type of thing. So I filled out my application. I did this big audition. I did all these drawings and everything, listening to my Paula Abdul and playing my Sega Genesis and working on Phantasy Star and all that. But trying to get into this art school because I knew that if I went to a regular junior high, kid like me that sits on the sidelines at a dance and sits on the carpet roll and just watches everybody like a fly on the wall and too scared to do anything except get a soda and hope that her friends will come over and talk to her at some point. But I was a socially phobic kind of kid. But I love to draw, and I could draw cartoons pretty well. And I used to make money when I was in 2nd grade drawing cartoons for other kids on their school box and things like that. So there's me over there, but I didn't think I'd survive at a regular junior high with football and all that stuff. Come on, we're talking 90s here. The art school was my option. And let me tell y'all, it was a whole new metaverse. The popular kids were talented. They were incredible. This guy, Stan Welsh, he learned to play the piano like overnight. He's a genius. Stephanie Kobabi had this voice of an angel. I was like, how did you do that? She's like sitting next to me in English class. And then all of a sudden she gets on stage and is like, what? And I'm like, oh my gosh, girl. I was in awe every single day of how incredibly impressive people were. We had different art areas. We had visual, like I was in, where we did painting and art, and Miss Grandusty and Miss Rudy were my Mary Poppins that got us through and showed us how in the afternoons we could use art to synthesize our thoughts and take all the stress from the day and put it into our art and give it feeling and emotion and let it out. And that was mental health then. That was our mental health. They were our therapists. We did art therapy every day. But the other art areas, we had dance with Miss Porcher, and they did these beautiful, assemblies and everything. And theater would put on productions like Hair, and just, wow, the kids could act and sing. And of course, they were all the clowns in class. And the music kids were quiet like us, and they were the smart ones, the good in math and all that, like you might expect. And but they could play instruments, which is something I could never do. I was the kid that never played an instrument and got picked to be like the elf with the curly shoes and the giant hat, one of the nice elves on the elementary school music assemblies. In any case, this place was Mary Poppins' world. I felt like I entered a school full of Mary Poppinses, and this carpet bag that she had was in every classroom. Nothing cost anything. I had all the art materials I needed. Money wasn't an issue. Power was creativity. Power was talent. Talent was the currency. It was amazing. What these kids could do at 13, many of us couldn't do at 45. It was crazy. We'd sit at lunch outside, just anywhere you want, real bohemian style. I was growing up in West Palm Beach, Florida. The weather's gorgeous. It's South Florida and sunshine. We had sunshine. We had friends. We could sit with who we want. And people play guitars and make things, paint each other's faces, whatever kind of wackiness. And our teachers were just as weird. They'd stand up on a desk and sing Greatest Love of All in the middle of class or all kinds of silly stuff. But everybody was just a little bit on the noodly side. Maybe it was the Florida heat. Maybe it was Miss Grandusty's wild experiment coming to fruition. But you had a bunch of neurodivergent kids with a bunch of neurodivergent teachers. Not a lot of special ed pullout, no gifted really. We all were gifted. Everybody was gifted because they were neurodivergent. They could think on several levels outside of the box. They didn't let the box be a cage. Being in a box is no fun. Nobody wants that. But sometimes I think we get a little muddled in our lives with some of the rules. And I think just the words need to change. And that is where Mary Poppins lives. Because if the words can change, like my father says, to be confident, capable, and connected is the secret to great teaching. And as a school principal for years, he started schools, my family business is schools. I was born in a school. I've been watching teachers my entire life long, living in the school office as the kid playing with the gerbils. I've been watching people forever, and I realize our teachers need credit where credit is due, and we are not done talking about teachers, not by a long shot. But Mary Poppins is there. Mary Poppins is when teachers get to be creative, and they take anxiety and put down that Red Bull, give her a nice hot cup of cocoa, and let her draw. Let her be free to be artsy and weird and creative, and let them have that space to be who they are. Because that's good teaching. If they have that time to noodle, then they're going to bring that to the classroom and bring their excitement back. And that excitement is absolutely infectious. We need that Mary Poppins spirit back. We need to appreciate teachers in order to do that. And I want to elevate those teachers. I want to integrate them into the classrooms, to take that little seed of knowledge, that beautiful little seed that each and every child is, and let them bloom into a nice, happy little daisy, the friendly flower, a la You've Got Mail, the friendliest little flower, and play the game of middle school a little differently than we did. In Gen X, that was a place of trauma. It was like going to the Hunger Games. It was like playing Dragon's Lair, where if you make one wrong move, then you got to play the whole game over again. It was like the 80s was all about you're going to die. If this happens, you're going to die. Watch the Goonies. You're going to die. If you're a Goonie, you could die. But we always face sudden death at any moment, even in Disney movies. But now it's not like that. We can provide a safe space for our kids, a happy space, a place where teachers also have equitability. They can feel like they are appreciated, paid well, and treated fairly so they can have that clear-mindedness that they desperately need. So that Mary Poppins, if you're out there, fellow teacher, let's do it. Let's get back in the classroom. Let's erase the dry erase board that we had with all of these old school thoughts about how we used to teach people and what used to work. Kids are not going to be made into factory workers anymore. Kids are not going to be possessed by Satan. This is not what it's about. But now we have all these issues going on where things aren't allowed in schools and so on, and teachers have lost their way. They've lost their power, their joy, their spirit, and I want you to get it back, and we are going to get it back together. I promise you that. And guess what? I may just have a plan for how to fix those middle schools out there by looking at that School of the Arts and examining what made it tick and what made anxiety turn back into imagination. And think about what we could do for our kids if we could just take a minute to examine Mary Poppins, look at what she can do, and try to help our teachers to get to that point. So to all of you, I challenge you to think about this. Think about your kids. Think about your childhood and who were your heroes. Are you riding on Falcor the dragon at the end of the never-ending story? Did you make it to the castle at the center of the labyrinth? And did you rescue your baby brother from David Bowie? Did you grab the worm along the way? All you got to do is play this new game. We're going to play a new game. And we're going to rewrite this game this time with all kinds of bonus levels and fun things. But we just got to do it together. So if you're ready to play this new video game, I've got some quarters. Ready, player one? I'm ready to play as Mary Poppins. My name is Suzanne M. Swain, EDS, MSSW, and I'm auditioning to be Mary Poppins 2.0.